Before we get started talking about Disney Star Wars leaking all over the fandom once again, and a little peek behind the scenes from a former Lucasfilm employee thanks to Ichibaka, if you've come across this video, please make sure you are still subscribed. YouTube is doing its annual bot and old account cleanse, and there is always collateral damage. I appreciate you doing this, and I thank you for your continued support.
Because we're all mortal, right? We're all going to die. And I thought George doesn't want his characters to die. What studio is going to keep them going? And the answer was obvious: Disney. Disney has been around the longest and has the best record in keeping beloved characters going.
Nerdrotic.com.
I have to admit that clip was tough to put together. I didn't think I had any emotions related to Star Wars anymore, but I guess I was wrong. Now, we have a lot of leaks and rumors to go over. I have been emailed quite a bit on this subject. That's why I'm making a video. I have talked about this in length in multiple live streams, but I know a lot of you just watch my videos, so here we go. Now, we have the Doomcock rumors, we have some more rumors from Scotty Mendelson, and we have some interesting information from a Star Wars author, J.W. Rinzler. We're going to go over it all. Okay, we're going to start at Disney Star Wars is dumb and the most recent gossip, as our buddy Scotty Mendelson calls it, but the way I see it, it's just more confirmation that The Rise of Skywalker was a complete disaster. I don't think anybody can argue that. Star Wars has lost 50% of its audience from The Force Awakens to now, and I'm sure that's eroded even more. And I have no doubt that Disney is, I won't say in a panic, we'll just say they're very concerned about the future of their franchise. They do have one thing going very, very well, which is The Mandalorian, which is a step in the right direction, but it's not even coming close to solving all of the problems. And I know I'm going to hear the Clone Wars Season 7 too. I'll discuss that later in the video. This is gossip, but this makes sense because whether I like each film or not, every prior Jar Jar Abrams movie is excessively well made. Totally disagree right there. It's no secret I'm not Jar Jar Abrams' biggest fan. I believe he has constructed the Hollywood equivalent of a pyramid scheme. I think he's a snake oil salesman, to borrow a phrase from my good friend Doomcock. He is the cinematic antichrist, and I think we have a lot of evidence to prove that. Let's look at Star Wars and Star Trek licensing, specifically toys. Before, for both franchises, for both IPs, it was like printing money. And now, well, there's not much left of them. Who do we have to blame? We could certainly blame Kathleen Kennedy and Disney and CBS on the Star Trek side, but what is the one commonality between both franchises? Bad reboot. He's very good at what he does, and I won't argue with that. He is very good at fooling the bankers in charge of these intellectual properties into thinking he is the next Spielberg just because he babysat his kids, and, well, he was anointed by Spielberg as well. But again, look at his body of work. Is it worthy of $500 million for that next gig over at DC? And he's going to screw you guys up next, and that's a video for another day. Again, I am at Disney Star Wars is Dumb. It's run by the great Ichibaka. Please go check out his YouTube channel. Please go check out his Twitter and give him a follow there. He's a great resource for the fandom menace. Points of note, he knows a stunt woman doubling for Daisy who was still shooting November 7th. And I'm wondering if they pulled a Blade 3 here and shot some stuff with this stunt woman they really shouldn't have because Daisy wasn't around. Interesting. Most of the issues were with the studio demanding reshoots, not Jar Jar or Terrio. Timing is everything, and I do not believe in coincidences. And the first thing that comes to mind is this looks like a little CYA from the Jar Jar Abrams camp. Maybe, just maybe, it's because the Snyder Cut faction has a lot of momentum over at AT&T, who has made it clear they mean business. Nobody is safe. Not even Jar Jar Abrams. Oh, that gets my hopes up a little bit. I want to be careful there. I need to temper my expectations. Matt Smith was cast as the original villain. This villain was not a clone of Palpatine, but an original character, and was cut when Bob Iger demanded to bring Palpatine back because the audience won't understand who this guy is. Ah, poor Matt Smith. Things just haven't worked out in Hollywood for him. Rumor has it that Matt Smith agreed to a season 8 of Doctor Who verbally and then backed out because he saw Karen Gillan making it in Hollywood, and his buddy Andrew Garfield just got a gig playing Spider-Man, and Matt wanted some of that Hollywood cheddar, and it just hasn't worked out. But you are welcome back to Doctor Who anytime, Matt. Every actor hated how the movie turned out.
What was your reaction to the end of the movie? But don't use words, okay? Ready?
How does it end?
3, 2, 1.
What are you thinking?
Trevorrow was not told what the plot of The Last Jedi even was. They told him 6 months before the film came out to start working on his script, so he had to rewrite that. I'm surprised he didn't leave right there and then. Disney, as we all suspected, was paying attention to the negative reactions to The Last Jedi and thought the fall of Skywalker would fix it. Why I find this believable is because Hollywood ultimately is a bottom line town, and you will hear that from everybody. The only thing Disney looked at was Jar Jar Abrams made over $2 billion with The Force Awakens. He can fix it. He's also 100% sure that the promised merchandise is all stuff that was licensed and made relating to the first version of the film that originally was signed off on, which is why pretty much all we have are Knights of Ren, Stormtroopers, and Sith Troopers. That is very interesting. And while there's a lot of Midnight's Edge videos out there concerning Star Trek licensing with Bad Reboot and Secret Hideout that show that there's always been complications with the IP. I'm not surprised that carried over to Star Wars at all. The Knights of Ren were supposed to have more backstory, and Jar Jar specifically went to the trouble of casting all the original stunt guys from the first film, only to have the studio cut their backstories. You mean the stunt guys that were cut out of the first film too? Pertaining to Ben, he says the last fight scene was being reworked constantly, and he doesn't think anyone knows for sure what was supposed to happen to him. He says if anyone is going to drop facts about that, it'll be Terrio. Yep, that's another thing I remember hearing about from Doomcock, Midnight's Edge, Reddit. I did a video on it myself. And I doubt we're going to hear anything official from any camp due to NDAs, obviously. This is the last bit of good information. Also, what they shot for the first version of the film was about 40% scrapped and reshot. So no original version exists, and we won't get it a la Snyder Cut because Disney, unlike Warner Brothers, will never admit that they made a mistake with this billion-dollar franchise. I think there has been a lot of hope out there that, with the Snyder Cut and the success of that movement, that fan movement, that we would see something similar with Disney Star Wars, and I completely agree. Disney Star Wars will never, ever, ever admit a mistake. So we will never see multiple cuts of the film. We will not see a director's cut ever. Now here is another interesting article from Ichibaka at Disney Star Wars is Dumb, and it's about J.W. Rinzler, who used to work at Lucasfilm, and he's been writing a blog, The Rise and Fall of Star Wars, and he has been insinuating that there has been problems from the get-go. He was there at the beginning when Kathleen Kennedy took over and after the Disney sale. And obviously there are things he cannot say due to NDAs, but he strongly hints towards things we already know. Again, there's nothing earth-shattering, but this isn't from sources, which I have no problem hearing from. This is straight from the horse's mouth. In the Force Material podcast, around the 51-minute mark, they start talking about Bob Iger's book. The interviewer asks Mr. Rinzler if he had read it.
No, I think I read was some excerpt where he said that he could have handled, basically pushing George out of the creative process a little bit better, which I think is true.
The interviewer asks, that's the part of the book I was going to talk to you about. He talks in the book about, he boils it down to where there was a meeting where it became clear that George's ideas for the sequels were not, that wasn't the outline they were going to follow. And he says he regrets not giving George more of a heads up about that before that meeting. Do you recall the meeting that he was talking about? Do you remember what the atmosphere was like when he realized, oh, we're not doing my sequel trilogy?
I do, but I have to be very careful what I say, because as you probably know, I started a blog where I was going to talk about that. I figured my attitude was very naive. I thought, I'm doing this for free. I don't think the NDA covers this, but I was wrong. Obviously, the financial component had nothing to do with it, and some other people definitely interpreted the NDA a little bit more strictly than I would interpret it as. So I'm not sure exactly what meeting he's talking about, but I fully aware of what the atmosphere was like. And I mean, I can say one thing. I think I can say. Can I say this? I mean, I can't. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to sleep at night.
On July 1st, J.W. Rinzler hosted a live stream on his own YouTube channel. He didn't say much in the video, but he did leave a few interesting tidbits in the comment section from Mike Sidious. How did the Lucasfilm company culture change when Disney took over? J.W. Rinzler, in my opinion, for the most part, in licensing, it wasn't pretty. So this is where I want to hear from you in the comments section. Obviously, there was a major change at Lucasfilm. Was this because of Kathleen Kennedy, or was this because of Disney? Concerning his blog being shut down, and it is available if you go to Disney Star Wars is Dumb. He's got a download for it, so thanks again, Ichibaka. How long does the NDA last? Lawyers have said the more time that elapses, the less the NDA can be enforced, but it's not a fixed time. I think he's getting his point across just fine. How was working with Kathleen Kennedy? J.W. Rinzler responds, interesting. I may be going out on a limb, but it doesn't sound like he had a positive experience. As a matter of fact, that sounded like Hollywood speak for, I can't stand working for this. You can tell this guy really wants to say something, and each live stream he goes on, he says a little bit more. Then, in a more recent live stream from a few days ago, J.W. Rinzler discusses working at the Lucasfilm archives with Sci-Fi for Me TV. At about the 23-minute mark, he discusses his feelings about the changes at Lucasfilm under Disney. He says the following after being told about the rumors of an internal conflict between Kennedy and Favreau/Filoni.
There are stories, and of course they're unsubstantiated, they're rumors. We hear these things, bits and pieces, different places, that there's infighting at Lucasfilm now since Disney bought the company. Are you aware of any? Have you communicated with anybody? Do you keep in touch with anyone that's told you anything about what's going on inside?
I keep in touch with a couple people. A lot of people left, such as myself. I really did not. I think that's fairly obvious. Did not enjoy the transition. I was optimistic at first, and then personally, I did not like what was happening. I didn't like what was happening to the licensing department and the publishing department, or the films. That's just my personal opinion. And after I really tried hard to make it work for myself, because it was a job too. I didn't want to starve, to put it in an extreme way. But I just couldn't take it. And I don't think there were camps at that time, but maybe now there are. That I really couldn't speak to. But a lot of people, left. One friend of mine, she left. She saw the writing on the wall right away, and she got out very early and suffered less brain damage.
Now, is that something that you can attribute to Disney or the change in management at Lucasfilm with Kathleen being in charge now, or a combination of things, or you don't want to say?
I think I'd rather not say.
Okay.
Oh, that's not all. In the latest podcast from forcecast.net, J.W. Rinzler discusses the differences of working between Lucasfilm and Disney. After saying generally good things about Lucasfilm, Mr. Rinzler went on to say the following at about the 18-minute mark.
When Disney came along, and I will say this, I don't think it violates any NDA. I'd been there for 15 years. I'd worked with George Lucas for all those 15 years. And I couldn't see a script for the longest time for The Force Awakens. And so it was just the polar opposite of ways of working. It was all about control and fear and paranoia. And Lucasfilm, not that Lucasfilm we had some of that. I mean, it wasn't like it was heaven on earth, but it was far and away like day compared to that night. It was just so much easier to, and we didn't torture the licensees. Right. Some of them could come in and read the script. Not everybody, but the head person, whoever needed to read it for that company could read it so that they knew what was going on.
I certainly look forward to hearing a lot more from Mr. Rinzler in the future. Now to those Doomcock rumors, and we will end it with a comment from Mr. Rinzler's July 1st video. MT, I hope to God that Kathleen Kennedy's 7, 8, and 9 trilogy doesn't exist. George brings you back, and you guys work on the real 7, 8, and 9 trilogy. J.W. Rinzler, I'm sure everyone has noted that the sequels don't have the Roman numerals. I doubt there's ever going back or that I'll be involved. Again, I have discussed this in multiple live streams, but I haven't really talked about it in a video. I will link Doomcock's video in the description just in case you're one of the 2 or 3 people on the planet who hasn't seen it. The video is about Disney possibly erasing the sequel trilogy from canon and putting it over into Legends using the World Between Worlds. There's more to it than that. Check it out in the video. As much as I want this to be true, I do not think it's possible, and I do think a lot of it has to do with contracts and licensing. I think that would make Disney vulnerable to litigation, and you would also be erasing the first female lead in a Star Wars movie from canon, and I don't think they would want to stand up to that criticism. I think the one thing Disney should notice was how excited it made the fan base, including a lot of people outside of the fandom menace. Again, that's the biggest takeaway from all of this, proving Disney Star Wars is a complete disaster still. Now, there are signs of health, of course. We'll start with the Clone Wars because that gets brought up all the time. I don't think they're making any more, and it was good, but that's playing to your base. That's not bringing in any new fans. This is a billion-dollar franchise, which requires billion-dollar films. You still need the normies. Now, The Mandalorian did a pretty good job bringing in some Karens with Baby Yoda, and now that I think about it, that would be the best place to use the World Between Worlds, because that would get The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda out of a universe that ends in the fall of Skywalker. I can see the We Got This Covered article now. Rumor: The Mandalorian to use the World Between Worlds to time travel Baby Yoda out of a universe where he'll upset the balance of the Force. This comes from the same people who told us the Titanic would sink in 1912 and JFK would be shot in 1963. Sure, these rumors sound crazy, just like it sounded crazy that most of Solo got reshot. What do you think created fandom? Talking about rumors, talking about theories, expressing our love for an intellectual property like Star Wars, Star Trek, or Doctor Who. That's why we as fans have every right to talk about whatever the hell we want. George Lucas sold Star Wars to keep his characters alive, and the first thing they did was kill them. They have failed him, and the only way they can get this thing back on track is to bring him back. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.